Hey everyone, this is CG Artist. Just wanted to tell you that the video for this podcast kind of got messed up. Was not in sync at all. Plus there was a snafu at the end and, well, mistakes were made. Instead, this is an audio-only podcast, and we wanted to release this for the subscribers of our YouTube channel. Now don't worry, next month, or starting next year I should say, we are going to start doing regularly scheduled podcasts, so you will hear a lot from us. Until then, sit back and enjoy. A long time ago in a galaxy almost far, far away, 4 makers unite in order to share and discuss their maker knowledge and some interesting topics along the way. Join us as we light the spark that brings back your childhood in the Almost Star Wars show!
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Almost Star Wars show. And this time we don't have any special guests with us because we are 4. As you know, if you watched the last episode, Brian from the Smugglers Room has joined the team as a regular member. So, as always, I'm here with...
I'm Brian with the Smugglers Room.
Dennis from the Black Market Outpost.
And Ron, the CG Artist.
Awesome, guys. And we've got some really interesting topics to get through tonight. Same format as always. Our topics for this evening, though, are Solo. Is it a good film? Let's have a review of that. Let's talk about that. We're also going to be looking at our experiences when it comes to Comic-Con. So our first cons, how did it go? What do we like? And then if we've got time, we're going to delve into the lore of droids in video games and give them a bit of a comparison to how they appear in the movies and have some discussions around that. So I think because recently it was a Comic-Con and half of our team met up, if you've seen our socials, you'd see that Ron and Dennis have been hanging out without the other two. Let's jump straight into the Comic-Con discussion. So over to you guys.
Cool. Well, it was Dennis's first con, so I guess we'll start with him to see what he thought about it. Keep in mind, it's because it was after COVID, so it was kind of a stripped-down version of it, so it wasn't all it could be, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So, Dennis, what did you think?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting. There's definitely a lot of things to see. We did lots of shopping. Like Ron said, it did seem stripped down. I mean, there was still enough stuff for somebody going for the first time to see and do. But I guess I sort of expected more of a cosplay type atmosphere. I think that was lacking the most.
Why was this your first time? I'm curious, Dennis. Was there a reason you'd never gone to one before, or?
I don't know. I don't want to say I never had an interest in going to them, but I just never felt like it would like I felt like I would be out of place.
So weren't you going to wear your Tusken Raider cosplay? You were working on it. You did the amazing helmet and things. I know there was a plan that you were going to do that, but
I was attempting to get it finished for that, but I don't even know if I'm going to have it done for Halloween at this point. Things have just gotten hectic. The pandemic I think we had a lot more time to do stuff then than we do now, and I'm slowly finding that out more and more every day.
Yeah. So I felt like there was a lot of cosplay. I did like the 501 representation in Michigan there, so that was cool.
Yeah.
The droids that were circling around, being remote controlled. Plus, the guy let us see kind of like the innards of the droid and everything. I would say, though, because I've been to a ton of these here in Chicago, the WizardCon, they call it, which used to be just plain Comic-Con. I think the thing that was lacking the most would be displays. Like I was telling Dennis, usually at the cons, you have like this giant Marvel display where they might have like a giant size Hulk or Cyclops or something like that, fully resin made, or not resin, but more fiberglass made. And it's just really cool. And then they would have some sort of booths that you could kind of walk inside and get an experience. Same amount of cosplay, but even the cosplay was played down just a tad this year. So,
and it was where we didn't tell anybody where you were. Was it? You said it was in Michigan?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yes, we were in Michigan.
Yep. So it was called the Motor City Comic-Con.
Yeah, it's Novi, Michigan, but they consider the Motor City Comic-Con Detroit. Right, you're about 25 minutes north of Detroit.
Gotcha.
So who had the longest road trip then to meet up?
I did 5 hours to get there.
Was it weird meeting in person after doing so much online?
Well, after
Not
Dennis
really.
grabbed my hand, for a handshake and nearly squished it to death. Yeah, no, it was cool though. No, it was cool. It's funny to
All
see
this
the size
time.
comparisons. Like, damn, I am small. So
Well, that's what blew me away. I guess I've seen Ron on like this or on photos, and I for some reason thought you were like 6'7", 6'4",
oh,
and then I always thought Dennis was shorter than you. When I saw the photo, I was like, wait a minute.
Maybe it's
yeah,
got something to do with the camera angles that we use in our videos. Whether we have the camera low, so you get that heroic kind of. I don't know. Maybe we've just been preconditioned to expect a different height. I too was blown away when I saw the photograph. I thought, wait a second.
How tall are you?
I'm about 6'1".
Okay.
see, and I'm 5'7", so there you go.
There you go. All right. James, where are you?
I'm 6'3".
James, yeah,
6'3".
James is way up there.
What about you, Brian? I guess you've been going to Comic Cons for many years.
You would think, but that's actually not the case.
Really?
We have Denver Con, which they've changed it from Comic Con as well. It was Denver Comic Con, but when San Diego got mad at everybody for calling it Comic Con, everybody had to change their name. And I can't even tell you what it is called now. But I've gone there a lot, and I say a lot, I mean maybe 4 times. It wasn't something I did when I was younger. We started going when we started bringing the 2/3 scale droids. We started bringing those to shows. I know that my dad's got Lubbock Comic Con, and we've gone to that a couple of times and had a booth there last year that we actually built and sold stuff and that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
I went to my first Star Wars celebration, which is a con, but it's like the mecca of con when it comes to Star Wars. But what's funny about that story is the first ever Star Wars celebration was here in Denver, where I live, and I didn't go. I didn't even know it was a thing. So, yeah, so I haven't been to a lot, and I have never gone in costume, ever.
Yes,
See, I have. The first time I ever went to one properly was when I went, I think it was 2019, to MCM Comic Con in London at the XL Centre, which is actually a 5-minute train drive from where I work at the college. And I went as Iron Man. So I made a suit, an Iron Man suit Mark IV, out of foam. And it was my first ever sort of, I mean, I'd been to a Comic Con before, but I'm not cosplaying. I'd been to one before, but not many. And I thought, I was in the Marvel fever. I was feeling it at the time. I was watching all the films. And I thought, I'm going to try and make this Iron Man. So that was my first. And it was grueling. It was 4 hours of posing for pictures and sweating, but I enjoyed it. It was great fun. I agree with your point though, Dennis, about expecting big set pieces, because one of the things that was there at the Comic Con in London was huge set pieces. I think we had the one with Hulk busting out of the floor, and then there was a really good Star Wars display with a full-size land speeder and all of that. And Comic Con has actually been on this weekend. I didn't make it, but a lot of my students have gone, and I've heard it like you say, it played down compared to normal. But
I think I mentioned to Ron a couple of times as we were walking around, like not a single person had any kind of lightsaber displays or nothing prop related. I mean, it was virtually a giant toy sale.
Funko Pops, right?
And you know what? That's a lot. That's what I found it to be a lot of, was a lot of selling toys and memorabilia, but not necessarily props. And I think I was pretty disappointed the first time I went, because I was expecting that, and that wasn't the case.
There's a fan made one over here. I've never been to it, but I've seen the pictures on Facebook, etc., and it just looks insane. It's built by fans for fans. That old saying, but it's true. And then they were recreating the Scout Walker, the bunker doorway, amazing stuff. So I'd imagine the difference between a fan one and a commercially driven one is probably quite big.
Right. I mean, like Brian was saying, I initially in my head I was thinking I'm going to see, a prop or some dude who paints faces or does makeup or some, that kind of stuff. I guess is what I was more expecting. I mean, it was cool. I had a great time and I did plenty of shopping. But I assumed when it was a con, it would be more of the comic book movie type related things.
Were there any stars there? Any big stars?
Yeah,
More than we expected, actually, because they kept changing it over and over. I don't know if Ron, if you noticed, our parking passes actually had 2020's date on them. So I think a lot of stuff got canceled and shifted and shuffled and here and there until they finally were able to pull it off. But Giancarlo Esposito was there. Who else did we see there?
There was a lot of people I did.
Oh, our favorite Meatloaf was there. We couldn't figure out why, but Meatloaf was there.
I think there was also Ron and Dennis from the Almost Star Wars show. They were there as well, I think.
We were there.
Of course, we're talking about celebrities,
Big time,
of course.
big time.
Min Yao Wing was there.
Ron, that's not your first Comic-Con, or was it?
No. I always go to the Chicago one, and this was the 1 year, aside from the pandemic, that I switched and decided to go to the Michigan one because Dennis is out there. So I figured, go to the con and meet Dennis in person. Go from there.
They happened to be both on the same day too, didn't they, Ron?
Yeah, same Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, same day.
Right.
So next year you'll make Dennis drive to Chicago.
There you
Next year we're gonna request it on different dates so we can hit both of them.
Yeah.
Did you go to Star Wars Celebration in Chicago, Ron?
I didn't. I didn't. You know what? I knew of it. I knew of it late. I had never even heard of it for a long time, and then I'm like, wait a minute, there's an actual celebration. Oh, I'm missing it. And by that time, as you know, tickets are. I mean, you have to get tickets almost the moment they go on sale. Otherwise, you're out of luck.
I just tuned into the live stream. I watched the YouTube. Is it Verizon? You guys have a platform over there. They transmit the whole thing, the whole celebration. And my missus is really good because she knows that when that happens, that 3 days, that's me glued to it because it's you get quite good coverage as well because they have all the panels and all that stuff. That's pretty good,
right?
But obviously not as good as being there for real. So
Did you go to the last one that was in London, James? Because there was one.
I could have kicked myself. I didn't book the tickets, and I don't know. There was some other stuff going on in my life at the time. I just didn't get to it, but it'll come around again, I guess, in 10, 20 years.
Well, they were supposed to go every other year initially. In 2017, when they had it in Anaheim, then the next year they had it in London, and it was supposed to bounce back and forth.
Yeah.
And then for whatever reason that stopped. I don't know. Yeah. That was impressive because you did see those big sets. The one in 17 had an entire cantina that they built, and then they had the sand crawler. There was just a lot of stuff for those.
Yeah. On the stream for that, that's where they were interviewing everybody in the cantina. So I remember seeing the cantina. It was good.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got a weird selfie photo of me and J.J. Abrams and Chewbacca in the background about 3 feet away, and J.J. was feeding him, I think it was licorice or Twizzlers. That's what it was. Twizzlers. Yeah.
But I guess, though, just think about the topic for a second. I guess with it being, the clue is in the title, Comic Con. We're Star Wars fans sort of trying to push a Star Wars thing on it. I mean, the celebrations are obviously different because that is all about Star Wars. But I go to MCM Comic Con and I'm expecting, where's all the Star Wars? But yeah, it's about everything, isn't it? Which is good.
Yeah,
that's how I felt when we were at the con. I was just seeking out Star Wars stuff, and that's all I really cared about. Even though it's for comics and everything. So now when I go, it's more it's more Marvel and Star Wars now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was still a great time. Like there was an entire group of Spider-Man from the Spider-Verse cartoon where there's several different characters. They were all grouped together, and one of them had a different costume on. So you could they were walking around all over the place, and it was the whole group. And there's still quite a bit of stuff. A lot of stuff I didn't even recognize, but people in full costume. But
see, I was actually looking when I went to it. When I went to one a few years back, I was actually looking through the comics section, and there was obviously lots of them. But over here in the UK, I don't know whether it's the same over there, but there are lots and lots of comic collectors, and they love it. And it was great. I was trying to find some of the original Iron Man comic books, and I managed to find a few actually. But then I found all the original Star Wars ones from the 70s. Because I've got quite a few of those anyway, and I was trying to find. I think I had 7 or 8 issues that I needed, and I found half of the ones I wanted. So it was pretty good from that point of view. It cost me a few quid, but it was worth it. But yeah, I was the same. I was looking around and just enjoying the fact that there was an ensemble of stormtroopers not too far away, and a couple of land speeders, and yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, it seems like there's more emphasis on toys than comics at the Comic-Con.
Right.
It's a little
Agreed.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, as a kid, I was a big time comic collector. I still have quite a few cases down here sitting in the basement. But
That's awesome.
I don't know. I sort of lost interest somewhere along the way and didn't know what to do with them. So they're just piled up over here, all sealed away in their boxes.
Like, is there something you can do with, I mean, other than keeping them pristine in a box? You know, what unique people, I wasn't a comic book collector, so I don't have it, but I'm wondering if there's something you can do with them, maintaining their value, and still display them.
Absolutely. I mean, they still have a value. They're pretty sealed up and well taken care of. I just, like I said, somewhere along the way, I lost interest in comic books and just stopped buying. It used to be a ritual every Friday. We'd get 4 or 5 guys in a car and drive to the comic book store every release Friday.
Yeah, we used to do that as well. Collect a ton of comic books because they would all come out on certain dates. So you'd run in there and try to get them all, see what was new. Yeah, I used to collect a lot of Japanese comics and independent comics. So I would do the same with that, which I can kick myself because some of the comics that are expensive now that are Marvel and all, obviously because of the movies, I remember seeing those covers back then going, oh, that's cool, but I'm so not into that. You know, I want the independent stuff. And I just expanded my view and picked up a couple of those just to put them away. That'd been great.
I think it's important as well to recognize the way we consume the written word has changed, obviously, with devices. And, you know, I really enjoy looking at graphic novels on my tablet. You know, I love that. As an experience, it's nice. The images look really good and they pop, and it's just a nice kind of experience. But you can't beat the paper comics, and of course there's people that are diehard and won't look at them on a device. But it's interesting that there's still such a big pull for that, even though, you know, effectively you could have the whole world's comic on a terabyte SD card or something, sort of slapped in the side of your tablet. So it's kind of cool that we're keeping those traditions and still doing that. And of course they're priceless, aren't they?
For sure.
So just thinking, guys, next year for Star Wars, it's a massive year, right? There's lots of stuff coming out, and we've talked on this show before about, is there too much Star Wars? And you know, I'm getting really excited about, you know, just a Disney Plus offer next year.
Yeah,
and imagine what the cons are going to be like then. You know, there's so much more to pull from, but there's a lot coming our way. But before we look forward, let's look back. So one of our topics for tonight was to talk about Solo, which I think is a highly underappreciated movie. So we'll have just a little conversation about what we each think about it. And I'm going to go last, actually. I'm interested to hear what you guys think. And then I've got a few points I think we should raise and talk about. And let's see where we all are on this. Let's see if we all agree with each other or not. So who wants to go first?
I could go first. Sadly, it's the first Star Wars movie that I did not see in the theater. And I'm not sure why. I didn't have as much interest, you know, I mean, after Rogue One and everything. And then after I saw it, I wished I'd seen it in the theater. A lot of people give it a bad press, and I thought it was pretty good. You got to see the origins of how he got his weapon, how he met Chewie. There were some hits and misses, I think. A lot of opportunity to dive into the universe, but I mean, with one movie, you know, how much can you put in there, right?
Completely. So, scale of 1 to 10, what did you think? 1 being great, 10 being not so great.
7.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right. Who's next?
You go for it, Dennis.
Me? I kind of agree with Ron. I mean, I still like the movie. I've watched it several times. I've not once watched it where I thought, man, I don't know. Could have been a lot more developed. It may have been squeezed into a box per se, but overall, I thought it was a great movie. I think their timeline was a little bit too close to to New Hope. That's for sure. I mean, I guess we really, at the end of the movie, we really don't know how much time he spends with Jabba the Hutt before we see him in A New Hope, but they sure make it seem like he's going to get the job, do the job, and then bam, we're into A New Hope at the very end there.
Mm.
So it's almost, I felt like it was almost too tight, even if they wanted to do a sequel.
Mhm.
Right? Well, the sequel would automatically have to include Jabba at some point if that's what he's talking about at the end of the movie. So,
Yeah.
but overall, I thought it was a great movie. I mean, if I had to rate it, I would say probably a high 7, a low 8, somewhere in there.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Right?
think I'm for me it's a question of did it not succeed because it came so quickly after The Last Jedi and the fan fury and fallout that came from that film, which totally where there was a whole boycott Solo thing going on because of all the drama in the background about people being mad at Rian Johnson and the whole Last Jedi
Which
thing,
is
right?
stupid.
Yeah, I know. I'll never understand that whole thing, but it did affect its performance. I think it suffered from the fact that it was released so quickly. I was happy having a film every year, but that one came within a few months. I think it was what, December to May, right? Something in that time frame. That being said, the first question I asked was, do we need a Solo prequel? Did it matter that we saw where he came from, or was there more mystique behind not knowing? So from that standpoint, I loved Rogue One, and I didn't need to see Han Solo as a young guy. It wasn't something I would have put on the top 10 list of please make this movie. That being said, I thought it was well done. I thought they casted it correctly. I thought that there was some interesting depth. I liked getting the little bits and pieces where you found out, his relationship with Chewie and the whole little scene with the blaster and where that came from. That was a great piece of propage right there. I mean, if nothing else, seeing that be disassembled and tossed to him and it was my favorite version of the DL-44. It was a prop maker because I liked the long scope and blah, blah, blah. So that was interesting. I didn't get the same sense that Dennis did, that it was too close to A New Hope, because I always felt like he had worked for Jabba for a long time. So to me, Han was probably in his, early 20s, mid 20s. So it was maybe 5 or 6 years. I don't know, in that time frame. I know they were developing 2 or 3 films out of this. It was going to be the whole Crimson Dawn and bringing in Darth Maul and doing all that stuff that they did. And it's kind of unfortunate that we didn't get to see that play out. But at the same time, I'm not heartbroken that we're not getting to see that play out. Yeah, I don't know. I guess ultimately for me, the question is, did we need it? Is our Star Wars life better because we had it, or did we not care? If we're rating on a scale of 1 to 10, and did you say 1 is great and 10 is bad, or 1 is good? And how did you say that?
Well, I'm confused now because these guys are saying high 7s and high 8s. I said 1 was the best, 10 was bad, but whatever.
Okay. It's that whole UK and US. From the US, we do 10 is the best, and you do 10 is the worst. So if 10 is the worst, I give it a 5. It's right in the middle of the road. I'm not thrilled. I'm not disappointed. It's just a cool Star Wars movie that we actually watch in this house.
Yeah.
So now I really got to know where James is coming from.
The grading
so wait,
there.
If 10 is the worst, I want to change my answer.
Yeah, exactly.
I've confused everybody now, and it's scary, really, that I can't get the grading right considering I'm a teacher. But, yeah. So my point of view. Sorry, Brian, were you finished? Sorry.
No, I was just saying I want to change my answer, just like Dennis. Now, if 1 is the best, then I would say where would we be? 4 then. There.
Yeah.
Okay.
4.
That's why I acted so surprised when I heard your grades.
I'm up there at the 4 mark. I would be a high 4 or a low 5.
There you go.
I wanted to sort of pick away at it a little bit, because one thing that's I've always had a question about this. Okay, now you think about Rogue One. The whole movie we spent with other members of the Star Wars universe. Okay, they weren't main characters. They didn't have the problem of the audience not accepting the new actor. And where they were using characters that we knew, they went to great lengths to make them look like Tarkin or look like Leia, And even in The Mandalorian, when they brought Luke back, they went to great lengths again to make him look like Luke as we remember him. And in the new movies, of course, for the flashback in The Rise of Skywalker with Luke and Leia in the training, again, made them look like we remember them. So for me, it kind of was a weird choice to make Solo, because it meant you had to spend 2 hours with some other dude playing the character, which when you think about that logic, they've gone against their own kind of consistency in terms of trying to make it look how we remember it, which for me always kind of stuck out as a bit of a weird, I guess, production decision. It's one of those things that you would think would be discussed at the powers that be, and somebody would have said, but you know what? This means we've got to stick somebody else in that role for 2 hours. Are people going to accept that? Now, I think that Alden, or however you say his name, I think he did a great job, actually. I thought he was great, likable guy. His version of Han was good, but, it wasn't Han. It was like an appendix film. It was like, this is what it could have looked like when somebody else played the role. So that was the thing that I was fighting against all the way through the film, that it was just not Harrison Ford. And I knew it was never going to be. And I knew it would have made no sense to have replaced him with some kind of deep fake throughout or CG, because it would have looked dreadful. Yeah. But that really took me out of it, took me out of the Star Wars world. Now, positives, though, were I loved the fact that they got John Williams in to write his Han Solo theme, or Han Solo Adventures theme, or whatever they called it. So John Williams wrote that theme, but then the rest of it was by John Powell. And actually, as a soundtrack, I think it's marvelous. There's one particular track, and we'll put the link to the YouTube video of it, probably as an overlay, but it's called Flying with Chewie, one of the tracks on there, and it's just brilliant. If it doesn't make you feel like you're sitting on the Falcon flying with Chewie, then I don't know what else will. And it doesn't use Star Wars themes. It's a completely new original piece, and it's just beautiful. So have a listen to that. So that was really good. So the music was great, and I don't think it hugely suffered from not having Williams. And I think because Williams gave us a new theme for Han, it kind of worked. And I also like the fact that it was set in my Star Wars time. So stormtroopers looked like how I remember them looking. The conversations were about an era that was familiar to me. However, and this is going back to the negatives, and you guys have kind of said this already, I just don't think it needed to be made. And what I mean about that is when you watch the original trilogy and he talks about things that happened in the past, like Ord Mantell, and all the other kind of little things they allude to, it could have been about any of those things. But instead it was a completely new story about a completely new love interest, which was great. I enjoyed it, but it kind of just meant he fit so much in before he met Leia, which kind of took away a little bit the impact of him and Leia, I think. And I know that the comics are dealing with that. I know that in the comics recently, I think Leia starts to find out about, I can't remember her name now, actually. What's her name?
Kira.
Kira, yeah. Yeah, she I think she starts to learn about that narrative. So that's interesting. But yeah, for me, though, it's similar to you guys. I don't feel like it necessarily needed to be made. And as you said, Brian, has it made my Star Wars life better? I mean, probably, because the Flying with Chewie track is amazing. And I love that. And it was interesting. It was interesting seeing somebody else play Harrison Ford. And there was a guy on YouTube that did a really good impression. You guys probably know of it as well. And he just had the look and the
Yes.
did the impression really well. And it was almost as if Alden, am I saying his name right? I don't know. But it was almost as if he wasn't trying to impersonate Han, which is probably a good idea. There was definitely scenes where he shouted Chewie in a certain way, and it sounded just like Harrison Ford. But then there were other times where he acted completely opposite to what I would think Harrison would have done. So yeah, it was an interesting film from that point of view. But in terms of it being released and how it was released, I can't remember hardly any promotion for it in the UK. It kind of all of a sudden just came out, and I remember nobody seemed to know about it. I obviously knew it was coming out, but it just wasn't. I mean, everybody knew about The Force Awakens coming out and other movies and series, but nobody knew. So I think it suffered. And when I went to watch it at the cinema, it was almost empty, which was quite sad for
Wow.
a Star Wars film.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in
You know
terms of
what's
scaling,
interesting? A question for you, James, on that, because
Yeah.
you're spending the time you're talking about Alden not quite fitting that Harrison Ford mark. What was your opinion of Lando in Solo?
interesting question. So what? I absolutely loved the portrayal of Lando. I thought it was cool. It was so cool. But again, the same decision was made. You know, they knew it was going to happen. You were going to bring those two major Star Wars players into the mix and have to replace them. I thought he did a really good job. I know that there was a little bit of a modern flick pushed onto his role, and I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but it was certainly present, and it stuck out a little bit to me. But I thought he was fantastic, enjoyable. Every single scene where he was there, and when they were together, actually, the rapport was fab. But it was a different kind of relationship. It wasn't like watching Han and Lando. It was like watching almost like a Marvel What If show.
I had a lot less trouble accepting the Lando character as a different actor than I did with Solo. And I don't know if it's because the acting was better or it was more true to the character, or if it wasn't such, Billy D. Williams wasn't such an influential actor that it bothered me. I don't really know the reason. I just know I accepted it a lot more.
I know that when I watched the making of it, and Donald Glover, isn't it? I've just Googled it.
Right, Donald Glover. Yep. Sorry.
He was showing the crew around the Falcon in like a making of, and even in that role, it was just oozing Lando. Sort of just walking around the ship. Check out my cupboard with all these cloaks and stuff, and And I actually really, and I'm sorry, I really loved the look of the Falcon when it was new and pristine. I mean, that was just such a brave thing to do. Beautiful. Yeah. All those pads everywhere. Amazing. But
not a fan of that escape pod though. I didn't like
no, it. I'm on about the internals, Ron. The external didn't like it at all, but inside it was great.
I think Disney's got to be feeling the same way about the Lando character. I mean, how quickly did they jump out there and get him rolling into a TV series?
Right.
Yeah. You're right. 100%.
Great.
And speaking of TV series, I think of course, chicken before the egg, right? I think Solo would have probably been taken better as a series versus a movie.
Nailed it.
But of course, the series hadn't come out yet, because the original thought was we were going to get a ObiWan movie, a Boba Fett movie, and then when they pulled the plug on all of that, and now we're seeing these things as series. I mean, I can't speak for Obi-Wan, but I feel like it'll be good things. But I think, I wish they would have held off on Solo, not released it at all, and now thought about it now as a series. I think that
even as a mini series, how they're we don't know for a fact that Obi-Wan's going to remain as a mini series, but I think they're only slated to do 6 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Even that would have worked. Again, I think that would have pleased all 4 of us, right? It would have been able to stretch the timeline.
Yep.
It would have been able to, develop things that weren't developing, and I think it just would have been a better way to go.
Yeah, you would have gotten more Jabba in there. I think at that point we would have seen, the constant conflict. We probably would have even seen more of a conflict with Greedo prior.
Yep. It's always, I keep making the analogy to my poor wife, and I'm sure she's tired of hearing it. So I get to talk to you guys, and you'll appreciate it. But I always say that it's like, it's like Disney bought the best and fastest sports car ever made and got in and had no idea how to drive it at first. And then they figured it out, and they were like, whoa, if you shift just right, we can make this sucker move.
Exactly.
And they just had to put the right people in the driver's seat. And it feels like they've done that. I will always be grateful that they took steps. Like, making Rogue One, it was worth it. Disney buying Star Wars, that movie was worth it for me.
Yep.
The rest of them
Totally
were
agree.
Enjoyable, but they weren't earth-shattering like I wanted them to be.
Yeah,
but then The Mandalorian comes out, and you're thinking, okay, all of that was worth it. So,
Yep.
I think there's also something to be said as well, and I touched on it earlier, about the way we consume media. So sorry if the teachery bit's coming out of me, but when you think about it, we've almost. I think Hollywood has some issues right now because
Yeah.
I remember reading a tweet actually. I don't know who it was, but somebody was tweeted something, and I read it and thought, you know what, I totally get that point. And they were saying that they find it hard to watch modern movies now when it's just a movie and it's not a TV show. And what they were saying was because you've got a couple of hours to meet the cast, understand them, character development, get the story rolling. You've got to get a lot done in those 2 hours. Now, we've been doing that for years. People have been making movies quite successfully with that formula for a long time.
Right.
But the audience at that point hadn't had access to literally thousands of streaming shows. And now I would say streaming shows that are done very, very well, from a visual effects point of view, cinematics. I mean, they're like watching a movie. Look at The Mandalorian. Every episode is like watching a film, and that's just within the Star Wars franchise, let alone everything else you watch on there. So I think that given that, you're right. Given the chance to watch a 2-hour movie or, a 12, 13-hour series, anytime.
Yeah.
And because you're going to get that character development and it's still going to look damn good.
Yep.
And I think maybe that's a good thing.
Do you think binge watching had a lot to do with that, though? The fact that now people can go on and watch a 22-hour movie in a weekend?
I think that has a part to it.
Series-wise?
What a weekend.
I mean, it's like it's the time that you get to invest in. I'm a big fan of character development. I was always a Stephen King book reader because there was so much development of character and you got invested in all that. We watched, my wife and I watched the new 2021 Dune last night, and it was streaming HBO Max. We didn't go to the theater, and we're watching it. It's 2 hours and 30 some odd minutes. And my wife turns to me and said, "This was fantastic. I wish they'd have done a series," because she wanted a longer, deeper look at all of that. I mean, and Frank Herbert's book is over 1,000 pages long. So you cram it into even, and I know they're trying to do 2 parts, but even then it feels like, man, I'd rather have 5 seasons of 12 episodes, an hour long.
Right.
So I think Dennis is right. There's that binge watching element that makes you want to do that.
Yeah. Yep.
Agreed. Yeah, totally. And I think one of the things as well about having a longer time to get to know the show is that it also gives the writers more of an opportunity to develop the story. Imagine being a writer and having the opportunity to write characters for a 2-hour film. That's got to be tough, to get character development. If you could record on 2 hands how many minutes a character has in a film on screen, you got to do a lot as a writer to make that work. And the opportunity then you've got to have whole episodes that are centering on characters is brilliant. But I think because of the quality of them, how they are now, if you think back to the 80s and 90s, when they tried doing TV shows of movies, it wasn't always successful.
It's terrible,
it felt like
I think the budget's just changed.
Absolutely.
That could be it.
Yeah, budget and technology, right?
Yeah.
You mean The Mandalorian shows us the volume that changes the way that's being made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
in a way
and you've got the widescreen, whereas the TV back in the day was 4:3. It's now 16:9, like the cinema. Well, more like the cinema. And then people have got better equipment at home and cinema surround sound systems and things. So you get more of the experience. But yeah.
Yep.
Sweet. Cool. Okay, so we've still got a bit of time. So this is one I kind of talked to the guys about earlier today and thought maybe we could just chuck this one in. So I've been playing again Star Wars The Fallen Order, as I think I've mentioned last time. I've been playing it with my son, and we've gone all the way through the game again, and I'm just a massive Star Wars The Fallen Order nut at the moment. So much so that on the Rebel Base build, I'm going to be creating a series of miniatures based on it as well, including Mantis ship, which you'll be able to take the top off and have a look inside, and a bunch of droids. And it was the droids part that I've been researching that really got me thinking about how the droids are different in the video games. And Dennis, I'm sorry, I know you don't play games, but I know you watch the videos, the cutscenes on YouTube, so you'll still be able to follow along. But we were also playing Battlefront 2, which has a single player campaign, and in there's also a droid that basically attached itself to a backpack.
Mhm.
And in the Fallen Order, you've got BD1 who sits on the shoulder and jumps off and goes and unlocks crates and doors and does all the things you expect a companion in a video game to do. And because of that, they're quite dynamic in the way that they move. So BD1, he's got two little legs, but he manages to climb up your back and sit on your shoulder. And there's even one scene at the end where you're fighting Darth Vader, and he jumps from your shoulder onto Vader's shoulder and shocks him at the side of the head, which is quite cool. And it's the kind of thing you don't necessarily see the droids doing in the movies and the TV shows, because particularly the older ones, because of the limited technology. R2 and 3PO were fairly grounded in the movies. Didn't do a lot other than sort of rolling along or walking, maybe falling off the side of a desert skiff and being pulled out of the sand. They tried to do a little bit more with them when they start to use CG with flying R2s and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of the time it would take them to animate a little droid on someone's shoulder, always being present in every scene in a movie and doing things, it would take a long time and cost a lot more money. But in a video game, it's a lot more easier. Mm-hmm. And then that changes the design a little bit. And I thought that's maybe what we could sort of have a little chat about. So sort of compare some of the droids we've seen in the movies and then look at droids we've seen in the video games. So what do you think, Ron? I know you play video games and
yep.
You've got an idea on this. So what do you think?
I think the reason why you're seeing droids different in games is just to give the player a little bit more to do, a little more dynamic. I mean, when you think about an R2 or 3PO, something like that, yeah, you can take control of those characters in certain games. But again, like what you said, they're just walking around. With a game, now you can add a totally different element where you take control of this droid and it becomes part of the story. Like, for example, in Battlefield or Battlefront 2, you need to take control of the droid just to free the main character. In a movie, that just wouldn't fly. It just, it'd be a waste of the viewer's time when we could be talking about the actual character. And of course, Hollywood actors have to have their face time, right? You're not going to waste that time with just going through like an exhaust shaft with a droid, or having a droid on the shoulder and then being able to control that droid and follow that droid through just to get to certain areas. And that's always been a thing. I mean, when you look at older games like Jack Daxter or something like that, where there are two characters, you always get to control that second character, be it big or small or main or secondary. And I think it's just a different dynamic altogether in games, and that's why you have those types of droids.
It's so great that they exist, though. That's the thing I'm grateful for, because they are. There's loads of different droids that have been made for the games and stuff, and even going back to the Knights of the Old Republic, there's a really cool, cool version of the astromech and the protocol droids. You can still see the similarities, but again, done in a nice way. But Brian, what do you think?
Well, it's interesting because when you're talking about the 70s and 80s Star Wars films, you're talking about R2 and a gonk droid, the slowest moving droid on the planet, right? Or in the galaxy, I guess we should say. There's a lot of that kind of static motion to those, because that's what they could build and they could get away with, and it was live and whatever. And now we've crossed into this CG realm, which the exciting part for me is we do now start to see some more dynamic droids. When you think of Force Awakens, you get BB-8. They use CG not to create the droid, but they used it to remove all the puppeteer elements. But BB-8 has so much more motion and character, I'm risking saying character, than R2, just in his mannerisms and movements. And like Dio, I wasn't the biggest fan of the Dio droid in the last movie, but it was a very cool concept of what they came up with. In Solo, since we were talking about that, those were they seeker droids that attacked at the train? I mean, that was a different version of the probe droid that we saw before. It was very cool design. So I guess what I'm saying, all of these long words, is I think the video game, yes, it gave you a character to care about and to do preliminary things that Ron suggested, but I also think that the movies now, with the technology and the ability to combine real world props and pieces with puppeteers and CG, will probably see more interesting droids as time goes on. I don't know, Dennis. What do you in that same vein? What do you think?
Yeah, I pretty much totally agree with what you're saying. I think that back in the day, that's just what it was, right? You got what they were capable of doing. And as time went on, I mean, the CGI stuff, obviously, that's all done computer graphics and the destroyer droids and all that stuff you had rolling through the palaces and everything. But even like with Dio and with definitely, I mean, with BB-8, I mean, that's a character all of its own. That droid is 100% character. There's no doubt about it.
K2
and I just think that
right?
I mean, K2, I think that's just the way they're headed. I just don't think the technology was there back then. But I also think that the video gaming is kind of what's helping them, or maybe not necessarily driving them in that direction, but they are pulling the ideas and they are developing that style of a droid in modern times.
Mm-hmm.
In Battlefront is the ID-10. That's like a miniature seeker droid.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that thing is fully articulated, right? It's almost spider-like with the legs and,
Yeah. See, the dude doesn't play games, but he knows his game droids.
That's right. Yeah.
But, I think you're right, Dennis. I think that the way that because the video games exist and the fact that you can do so much with the droids in those games, it is pushing the industry along, as in the movie industry along. And it's kind of got me thinking. When you think about from a cute factor, Mandalorian has Grogu, all right, and I'm really concerned. I know that Grogu was a major pull for a lot of people for the Mandalorian, and I'm hoping that Ahsoka and what's it called, the Acolyte and ObiWan and all these other shows, they're going to need their own version of cute. And I'm kind of hoping that we see a new droid or something, a droid companion.
Yeah.
I was thinking when I was playing the Fallen Order, and BD1 is such a big part of that, sort of sitting on your shoulder and taking part in it, and it's got such a character. I think it would be great to have one of the main characters to have a really cool little droid companion. And I think they could use game graphics. I mean, that is what the volume is. The volume uses, or was at one point using Unreal Engine, which is a game engine. I know that they've produced their own engine now, but it is a game engine. And so there's no reason why they couldn't do something similar with the droid, at least in shot, a lot simpler, a lot easier than they would have to previously. Right. So maybe that
even
designing,
right? They can puppeteer something like BD1. I mean, Darren Moser with Dr. Sci-Fi, he's building his own puppeteered version of it, and then just use the CG element to remove the puppeteer.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right. Either or. You can also puppeteer straight into Unreal Engine as well, straight into the game engine. You can puppeteer a version that is wide up and coordinated with a CG version, which would save a lot of time in terms of rendering it out afterwards. So, I think it's definitely on the change in terms of what we're going to see.
Yeah.
Droids in general, do you not think droids in general have been evolving from what we've seen on screen? Touched on it earlier when we were talking about Solo with L3, and kind of wanted to bring the droid discussion part to sort of a close, maybe wrap it back round to Solo. That L3 character, I mean, irritated me no end. I'm sorry, I didn't like the woman. The woman that played it was fabulous, brilliant, very talented. I just didn't like the voice. I didn't like the character too much. I thought it looked cool. I thought it looked really cool, but it irritated me. Yeah. And it was just weird seeing such a human. And I know 3PO is human. I know people are going to say, but you've seen it before. But she was overly human, and humans. I love you guys, but humans irritate me.
Right down to the walk, the sassy walk.
Just generally. But what kind of got me was when she sort of, she got damaged or injured, however you want to look at it, and then ended up becoming one with the Falcon. Mm-hmm. It brings something else to the Falcon where, you hear Han Solo muttering, come on, baby, hold together, or she's got it where it counts, kid. Is he really talking about L3? Yeah. That's the thing.
Right.
Must be, right?
I was blown away at what they were able to do with that droid. Mm-hmm. Right, the entire, like, the fact that there was an actor on set interacting with the cast made it a lot easier to accept.
Right.
I guess I don't dislike the character like James does, but it has it added another dynamic to that film, and there's something now that you can't shake as a Millennium Falcon fan, that she's pretty much the brains behind what's going on there.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay, well, thanks guys for joining us for another show. I think Brian's done a fab job, so we'll let him stay on the team. Until next time, check you later.
Cheers. Hold on, wait a minute. On behalf of all of us at the Almost Star Wars show, we just want to wish everyone happy holidays and a happy new year. Okay. Well, don't leave just yet. Hold on. Wait, it's almost done. Isn't that awesome? Right? All of these are cool, right? Even Big Fortuna. Okay. Now we're out.